be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guests every time here to discuss. Bring your passion, come along for the ride, and don't forget to subscribe, cause...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Hollie's Hotspurs Live with me, your host, not Hollie Agombar, who is currently sat in an airport in Italy, not on her way to Bilbao, sadly. But today we are joined by two wonderful guests. Of course, we have got the lovely Billy. Billy, how are you, mate?
Hello, man. Very, very good.
And as I was saying before, we've got the guy with one of the best setups. George, how you doing? Love it.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. It's still a work in progress. Actually, quite like yours back there. I'm actually getting some AstroTurf for this wall. In fact, the AstroTurf's in that corner. I need to put up on the wall. And I've also got a signed shirt that's going there from one of my favourite Spurs players of all time.
I'm in a hostage video vibes at the moment.
That's okay.
I'm just like any Spurs fan anyways, that's fine.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So obviously not much going on this week for us. Nothing important happening later. So we'll probably should talk about the game at the weekend. So Spurs going in against Aston Villa, absolute nothing burger game for us. Massive rotation from Ange, Billy. Expected, are we just going into every Premier League game now, expecting that every weekend?
Yeah, of course, man. And good to see a bit of rotation. Surprised to see Region starting, but where'd that come from? But yeah, has to be done. And I don't know, there's this weird sort of vibe around the fan base at the moment. And, I don't ever want to tell people how to support the club or whatever. And I know it's really frustrating, but I feel like I was willing to accept that I could not care less about this game on Friday. I could not care less. I saw some people getting upset over the results, still in the performance, but come on, man, this is a once in a lifetime context at the moment, and I'm very happy that we rotated.
George, with like a rotation of a squad like that in a game against a big team like Villa, there's players in there that have got a point to prove. Do you think, even if it is a rotation side, we should be putting up more of a fight against these sorts of teams, especially with the game on Wednesday? Players that are on the fringe, this is their opportunity to get in the squad.
No, yeah, for sure. But I think the problem is, looking at that first half especially, I know we weren't totally dominant or anything like that, but I was pleasantly surprised with how Sonny played, for example, for him coming back. And even, seeing Odegaard in that 10. I actually think that Odegaard and Son linked up quite well a few times in breaking on the counter. So there were like good little moments. I think the problem is, and we've seen it in the past with Spurs, whether it was when Conte, whether it was Pochettino, whether it was whoever was the manager and whoever the players were, the moment you change even just a few of the key players, the team just looks totally different. And when you're changing the backline completely, and as Billy said there, when you've got Region who's played like 112 minutes all season, Ben Davies and Danzo, who obviously, Danzo knew, and like they're not our starters, right? Once you change like a whole back line, you're gonna have a lot of inconsistencies, no matter if some others are trying to prove a point. So I think, yeah, there's always a drop off when you're missing key players, and that was just another prime example. Even though there were like tiny good moments from some individuals.
Before we get on, coming back to you, George, before we get on to the negatives of the game and talk about the Villa goals, like you said, there was some real good link up. Sonny, like you said, cutting off on the inside, looked energised. It looked like the rest was just what he needed from that injury. And then Odegaard again had that opportunity with a little cheeky flick, which would have been unreal. So there were, like you said, there were positives to take from the game. There wasn't just the negatives. But I don't know. I think especially for Sonny, for example, do you think that was will we see that on Wednesday? Do you think he has that in him, or is it too early to tell just from one performance?
I think that game was meant for Sonny to sort of kind of get up to speed a bit, because obviously he's been out for a little bit now, and look, we can all admit he's not had the best of seasons by his standards. He's obviously still, in terms of his numbers, performed just as well as some of the other players on our squad, if not better than some of the other players. But I think Sonny in previous seasons has set such a high standard for himself that we can see the drop off in him, and I think he kind of needed those minutes in that game to really get back up to the speed. And even though he did look quite bright compared to what I thought he would, you could still see there was like these snap moments he's not quite getting right, whether it's maybe getting off the shot or the pass early enough. And we've seen Sonny in the past in some of those chances when he was going quote unquote one-on-one. He's buried some of them. He's even scored against Villa at Villa Park in some of those same situations, whereas he didn't this time around. He either just went over the bar or the pass didn't find a player. Also, arguably, maybe the other players didn't make the right runs for him. If it's a Johnson at the back post or a Solanke there, you never know. It could be a different story, and he might have a couple of assists in his belt. So I think he needed that game to get up to speed, because I definitely would not at all want Sonny starting in a final with no minutes under his belt for however long he's been out now. So I think it was good for him to get out there. Some positives for sure, but yeah, I think you can tell he's just that little bit leggy still.
No, and my concern, obviously, coming up to the United game was kind of amplified by the goals that we conceded against Villa. Billy, a set piece across the concert, Kamara from the edge of the box with way too much time. We're all dreading a slabhead hat trick on Wednesday, be it from right wing or centre back. The goals that we conceded that's kind of been typical Spurs all season, and is that probably our concern for Wednesday as well?
It is, but I think we've got to remember there are two very different Tottenham sides. There's a Tottenham side that play Udogie, Porro, Romero, Mickey van der Ven and Vicario, and then there's the other stuff that we've seen this season when they've either been injured or rotated. And the difference in quality between those two performances and the level of the defence is insane. And we saw, we shut out Frankfurt, we shut out Bodo, who everyone was saying was going to be a really difficult away tie, both of them. And we show that we're more than capable. So, I don't really judge these Premier League games as as a good indicator for how we're going to defend against Man United. But I really hope that I'm a bit worried, because when I was watching that Man United Chelsea game, after I think it was either at half time or full time, they put that cross in for Maguire, didn't they? It was offside. And I could very easily see a world where that happens on Wednesday. And I just hope, Romero and Van der Ven, I love them very much, but neither of them are particularly good aerially. So yeah, that could be a real worry for sure.
No. So that is Villa boxed off, done. We can not talk about the Premier League anymore, Jen.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you think that's the least you've ever cared about a Spurs game ever?
Yes.
Probably up there, yeah.
I can't
Probably
even.
Up there.
Yeah, no. Because even when you think, well, no, yeah, definitely no. I can't think of another one that's worse than that.
I think I had the discussion with Hollie about, I know you mentioned it earlier, Billy, about how people support clubs is kind of up to them, but the mentality of our season's over, so we can just kind of like roll over in matches now and just focus on it was Thursdays, but obviously now on Wednesday. But I think when you get to that final, the Premier League games, you're like, I just don't want anyone to get injured. I just don't want anyone to, and the whole time it was 0-0 for a while. I personally was like, oh, it's not too bad, we're doing all right. And then they scored, and it was like, oh, all right, roll on Wednesday. But George, speaking of Wednesday, we're kind of go from front to back, talking through the team of how we kind of expect Spurs to line up, what we think we're going to see from Spurs. In that forward three, I don't know about you, but are there any non-negotiables in that forward three?
I mean, Solanke's going to start without a shadow of a doubt. It's just for me whether he's also paired with Richarlison, because I think the whole issue kind of stems from our midfield, right? With no Maddison, potentially no Bergvall, Sarr picking up a back injury at Villa. There's not many options left. I know he was testing out Odegaard in the attacking mid, like the sort of number 10 role. But in all the previous Europa League games, he's played both Richarlison and Solanke, and Richarlison's obviously been off the left most of that time. I do see a world where he's going to start Sonny and then potentially also have Richie and Solanke kind of working together up top. And then that basically just leaves Johnson for the right because Kulusevski's out as well. I think there's just, we have so little options in that sort of area. It seems to be off the pattern of recent games that Tell won't start because he's sort of started all of the Premier League games leading up to every Europa League game so far. And as much as I really like Odegaard's potential and his ability on the ball to be able to take players on, I think when it comes to a final, I think Ange is going to opt for a bit more experience and a bit more strength. And I think that's probably something that Odegaard's lacking a bit, especially when if he's going to have to work in that midfield. And to be honest, as much as I've been very critical of Johnson throughout all the season, not being able to take on his man, I think hearing how much Man United fans complain about them defending at the back post, I think he's primed and ready to be able to tap in any sort of counter-attack. So I think for me personally, I think it's pretty nailed on that Son, Solanke and Johnson will be the front three. It's just whether Richie or Odebear or Sarr is going to be the one that's backing them up.
Billy, we've seen this script before. We're in Europe. We wear our green kit in the semi-final. Our star player doesn't play, and is injured. And then there's questions around him playing in the final. Would you start Sonny on Wednesday?
I think there's a slight difference in the Kane thing, and the fact that at least Son has had some minutes before. And again, the difference between the Kane thing and this situation is that Kane was so obviously our best player then. Son is arguably not our best player at the moment. So it's a really tricky one. Personally, if it was on to me right now, with a gun to my head, I would put him on the bench. I think there's a pretty high chance this game can go to extra time. And I think he'd be an incredible sub to bring on second half, running at him, and a real difference maker that could win us the game when it's really tight. And I'm a big fan of Tell, personally. I think he's... I really like him, and I think he's a really good. It offers a lot for our attacking play. I also think there's a pretty strong chance that Richarlison might start there as well. So I think you've got 3 players there, and I don't really know exactly where it's going to go between the 3 of them on the left. If it was up to me, though, I would put Son on the bench and have him as an incredible impact sub.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we saw with the performance against Villa. He looked lively, he looked energised, and that looked like Sonny at his best. I think I text Hollie during the game and just said, "Oh, Son's just cutting off the left and curled one towards the goal and nearly went in," sort of thing. It looked like Sonny of old. But then the attack, we've kind of got a range of options. Somewhere where we've not got a range of options, Billy, is our midfield at the minute. How do you see and the selections as well? How do you see him deciding this midfield for this game?
Well, it just seems like at the moment, anytime we play, any kind of midfielders, one of them is going to get injured in the game. The fact that we've lost Bergvall, Maddison, Kulusevski is absolutely insane. Our 3 arguably best players this season. And then you throw maybe Sarr into the mix as well. He's going to have to go Basuma, Bentancur, and another. And it could be Sarr. Who knows? It's just obviously there's a couple of rumours flying around at the moment that Bergvall was potentially fit, and I know he travelled, and I know Maddison travelled, but I think they've sent the whole squad out by the looks of things. So I don't read too much into that at this point. But Bentancur, Sarr, and Basuma does not strike me as a particularly creative midfield. So I'd be a little bit worried if that does happen. So yeah, I think there's a massive dilemma in midfield, and I think it's a real shame that we've lost our 3 arguable best players of the season, without a doubt. But I thought Basuma and Bentancur were both excellent in the 2 away games in the Europa League recently. So there's still not all hope is lost.
No, and we're coming up against probably one of the best attacking midfielders in the league in Bruno Fernandes. That sort of Bruno Fernandes, Maddison player, how much of a difference will it make for Spurs if we don't have that player? We said about maybe putting Odegaard in there, or Richie dropping behind Solanke, but that key player that can pick out the pass, how much of a loss is it going to be for us in this final?
It's massive. It's
sorry, that was for George. Sorry,
I'll say one word. That it's massive.
Massive, yeah. No, it's huge, man. I think Maddison. I think he seems to be a player that just goes criminally underrated every year by everyone.
I completely agree.
Which I think. Look, he obviously has the issue of being able to stay fit. It's happened pretty much every season when he's been at Leicester. It's happened so far the 2 seasons he's been at Spurs. Other than that, though, he is by far our most creative player, and the numbers speak for themselves on what he provides in the team this season as well, despite being, a lackluster season from the team in general. And I think not having him in the team is a big miss, because he's been key to pretty much the whole Europa League campaign, to be honest with you. And exactly like you said there, it's about those sort of key passes that I just don't think any of the other midfielders can do. And even Kulusevski arguably doesn't really make the same passes when he's in midfield either. Like Maddison he's able to find the gaps into our wingers kind of through the opposition defence, whereas when you've got the likes of your Bentancur, Sarr, Basuma, even Kulusevski, a lot of the times they carry the ball and they just pass it out wide into relatively safe, easy areas. So it's huge. It's going to be more difficult to unlock the defence, which is why you sort of ask the question: do you ponder actually starting Odegaard in that position? Because he's creative in a different sense. He can take on the defenders and maybe create space that way. Again, the question I then also have is he will he be physical enough when it comes to having to track back defend? I think we'll take a more counter-attacking approach, if I'm being honest. It seems to have been that way for Frankfurt and Bodo Glimt away, and it worked really well. And I don't see why you should change that, especially if you are going to be starting Sonny and Johnson. I think they both thrive in a counter-attacking system as opposed to one where if we've got all the possession, we know they can't take on their fullbacks. They haven't been doing it all season. So I think that's where we just have to alter our game plan and play that counter-attacking way as opposed to being dominant on the ball, because as we just said there, we haven't got a Maddison that can find that pass through the defence when they're kind of sitting in a low block. So as long as Romero pings it long or Porro pings it from deep up to Sonny or Johnson, I think we've got a good chance. But yeah, it's hard to make up for missing Maddison.
No, and kind of piggybacking off that point about creativity, kind of moving on to the back four, I think I speak for myself. 3 of the back 4 speaks for who everyone would say would start. Probably Udogie, Romero, Van der Ven. The only position maybe unsure of is Spence and Porro. Billy, on that, kind of off the back of George's point, will we need Porro's creativity in this game more than Spence?
Without a doubt, I would say. And if you asked me that question about a month ago, I might have given you a different answer when it looked like Spence was one of our best players. But I think Porro has come back in and I think a lot of Tottenham, you have to judge them by these big Europa League ties that we've seen. I think that's our true sense at the moment. Porro, Spence have been alternating in the league, and I don't think they both hit patches of form, both hit patches of poor form as well. But in the last couple of Europa Leagues, Porro has been excellent, and I think without Maddison, without Kulusevski, without Bergvall, Porro is going to be one of our key creators, and I wouldn't be surprised if you'll find him in those half spaces a lot. Sometimes he likes to even drift into the number 10 role himself, play in the box, come out wide and cross. He's a massively creative player. The only thing I would say that possibly negates that is Ruben Amorim will know him really, really well. So obviously tactically he's not going to be surprised by Porro, because obviously he's a player that had a long-term relationship at Sporting there. So I think it's without doubt going to be Porro starting. And again, if you'd have asked me a month ago, I would have said that's a travesty and Spence should start every game for us. But Porro's really come into his own in these particular knockout Europa League games.
If George Ange decides to go with Spence over Porro, what do you think his mind will be at with making that decision? It obviously offers something a bit more defensive, but is that big of a drop off from Porro? And in a game like this, would maybe having a more defensive option be more important?
I just don't think you can really risk it, to be honest with you, because I think when you've already got Udogie on the pitch, he is that sort of more defensive fullback out of the two. Even though historically Udogie was a wing back when he was at Udinese, he still is by far, in my opinion, a better actual defender than Porro is. And I think for me as well, when Spence was going through that amazing patch in the season, he was better on the left side, arguably. So I think for me it would have been more of a case of would it be Porro and Spence instead of Porro and Udogie. But Udogie, again, since he's sort of come back from his injury, it took him a couple of weeks, but he really, really, really found his form again in the Europa League matches. And I think even like Frankfurt away, him and Tell were phenomenal on the left-hand side. And at the moment, I just think there just isn't room for Spence. And I think Ange can't really afford to disrupt that back 5 because they've performed so well in the last few away games. And we basically have to treat this as an away game because it's a totally different atmosphere. We can't just control the game as if it's a home one. So for me personally, I think as amazing as Spence was in that period, the sheer fact that he was, playing on Friday kind of tells me that he won't be near the starting lineup.
No. And talking about that away game mentality, Billy, psychologically, do you feel that United will have an advantage having already won at that stadium this year?
I think so, and I think the other advantage that they got is they are a club that knows how to win finals, and they're one of the most successful clubs in the history of the game, and obviously they have it in them to have that elite big match mentality, which is what we've been lacking. So. And I think the result that they had there, obviously the 3-0 win, is a massive, massive win there, and there won't be any surprises in the match day experience for them. So yeah, I think it's a huge one.
No, and George, with the United side, obviously Bruno Fernandes is probably going to be the standout player to be worried about. But is there any other players in particular that you're worried about, especially on Wednesday?
Amad Diallo, for sure. He is a quality player, and even in that 4-3 match in the cup against United, look, we can all attribute them to Forster, having an absolute stinker in a match. But at the end of the day, I think Diallo in that game looked electric, and he has done pretty much every time I've seen him play for United, if I'm being honest with you. So he's another one that I think we're gonna have to be wary of, which is why I'm kind of glad that he is on Udogi's side as opposed to Porro's side, because I just have if he was on that left side, man, I'll just have nightmares of Porro having to track back and Romero covering everything, and it could just be an absolute disaster. So for me, I think Udogi's going to have to really put in a shift like he has done the previous games to really try and lock off Diallo, because he's I think he's probably one of Man United's. Yeah, I'd say he is their second best player behind Bruno.
Yeah, for me, I was thinking, you're talking about we were talking about that Man United's prowess in winning things, and someone that had been getting a lot of stick for United throughout the season and has all of a sudden come into his own at the right time, and such an experienced player as Casemiro. How big will United having a player like Casemiro in a game like this be for that squad?
Oh, huge, because at the end of the day, like he is a serial winner. I think he's won 8 titles with Real Madrid. Like we're talking about a really experienced, well, at one point world-class player. So I think it's for them. It's going to be obviously really key having him in, and I think because they've also taken this similar path that we have of signing young up and coming players. You're thinking of Lenny Yoro, Rasmus Højlund, even having players like Amad Diallo start games, Garnacho. They've got a relatively young squad, and I think Casemiro and Maguire are probably the two that really bring that experience in the team and will be key for them. Trying to control the game, and that's probably what they'll use them for. And I think, again, like I just Maguire's another one that's just been finding form recently. Whenever he's played, he's scoring the winners against Lyon. As you guys said earlier with the set pieces, he's another danger man we will have to worry about, because he's been clowned in the past, but look, he's been putting in some solid performances in Europa League for them.
Billy, are we back? Oh, I think.
Yeah, we're back, man. Sorry, I've had to go.
Speaking
I've
of
had to go full Paratici because my laptop's died, so I've got the wired headphones. We're back.
Speaking of technical issues, there is one player on the field that I am optimistic for United has one of his usual performances, and that is Andre Onana. Do you think we need to be getting shots away as soon as possible and seeing what sort of game he's going to have?
Yeah, 100%. That was something that I was thinking before the game. I think he's lost every final that he's ever been in. I was reading. So yeah, the thing is, we don't really have many long shooters. So I'm not really sure who's going to do it. I really hope it's not Bissouma. We've seen in the last 2 games his long shots have been absolutely dreadful. But
although they are getting lower and lower, so maybe he's getting ready for the final.
Sarr's got a decent long shot on him, but yeah, I think it's something we got to be doing, because this guy, there's a mistake in him in the final, hopefully.
And again, sticking with you, Billy, obviously it's Spurs in a final. Obviously, it's a new squad in a final that, was it probably Sonny and Ben are the only people from the Champions League, if I'm right. I might be wrong. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Mentality-wise, do you think that's a gift or a curse? The fact that there are a lot of players in that squad that, aren't quite final ready, but then also they play without fear. So how do you think that will affect the squad?
I think we've been suffering for a number of years, and this is the first time in the last couple of years where we've genuinely had like an actual full squad turnover and a full, inverted commas, rebuild. I hesitate to use that word because it's a word which sort of haunts us as Tottenham fans and has been for decades, really. But we have actually done, as you say there, in what is the space of 6 years, we've done an almost full squad turnover. We've as you say, 2 players remaining. So I think the questions of mentality and like the questions that we've asked in the Pochettino area, this is a completely new squad now, and they got match winners like Romero, who's won trophies. There's quality all over the squad. Bentancur has won trophies at Juventus. So yeah, I really hope that our experienced players can hopefully dictating to our team. And I think it's going to have to come from our leaders. Romero is going to have to be a leader. Mickey van der Ven and Vicario, these players are going to have to be leaders. I've just seen, so, the last few finals that we've been in, Tottenham fans, we haven't even celebrated a goal. In this era, I think we've been 3 finals in a row without even scoring. So I just really want to turn up, and I really want to make sure that we have a Tottenham performance, exactly like those Frankfurt and Bodo performances, where we're playing a smart game. We're playing, we're trying to do some things which are going to frustrate Man United and just try and nick a goal here or there. I don't want to see us go gung ho and turn it into a complete, lottery. I want the smart Tottenham, which we've seen against Frankfurt and Bodo, to turn up, because I think that's our best shot of winning this game.
And I think, George, as fans, how much do you think the players will feed off the energy of the fans? The confidence, the Spursy comments, all of that sort of stuff. To think a couple of months ago, it was the disconnect between the players and the fans was huge, and now here we are in the biggest game arguably in a long time for Spurs. How much of a difference has that slight mentality change and relationship between the players and the fans will make on Wednesday?
I think it's huge, to be honest. I think we noticed it massively in that Bodo home game when that atmosphere was like one of the best I think I've ever seen, and I think, and I'm pretty sure Mickey van der Ven said it in an interview this week or last week, just how much they felt that from the crowd, and I think you kind of see it online as well. And I think just the way they talk in their interviews, they know that they have to get this over the line. And they've even quoted the fact that, Spurs have labelled as a team that don't win. And so many of them have come out and said that we want to be the ones that change that. And if I'm being honest, that comes down to Ange as well. Ange have distilled that mentality in them that you are the guys that are going to be the ones to change the mentality around Spurs. Regardless of whether Ange or the players or whoever's going to be here next year, like they're in charge of effectively their own destiny to prove that this Tottenham team can be a winning team, and I think that helps. Like to the question you were saying before about them being young and a fresh team, they don't necessarily have that on their backs. When you think about the 2019 team, they've been performing to a really, really high standard for about 4 or 5 years at that point now. And we missed out on the league twice. We missed out in cup semi-finals. And for them in that team, it almost felt like this was just like a last-ditch attempt at getting glory with that squad. Whereas this team is still really fresh. And I think with the energy that the fans can bring to those players who, quote unquote, aren't used to losing trophies, so to speak, I think it can really, really help them, and I think we need to really be on job on Wednesday. And I just want to see us drown Man United out. It's going to be difficult, naturally, with 50-50 split, but from what we experienced in that semi-final, I think the fans can really, really make a massive difference.
I think now it's important to move away from the pitch, so to say, and to talk about the manager, Billy. Ange Postecoglou has a chance to do possibly the coldest thing in football ever and win something in his second season after saying it and possibly finishing 17th in the Premier League. How confident are you in his leadership to pull us over the line on Wednesday and then Daniel Levy not give it to Ryan Mason tomorrow before just out of nowhere?
I've been a massive Ange fan, and generally over the last 2 years, I have wobbled slightly, as anyone would when you have to consume 21 losses as a fan, a match-going fan. To experience that is enough to turn almost anyone, I think. And I think anyone that's sort of hanging on now, I respect that. I've never turned for it. I've never insulted Ange or anything like that. I think he's an excellent man and one that I really, really bought into him. I really, really did. I really wanted him to be the guy. And it looks like he's got a pretty good chance of doing that. And I think for me, the key thing is that video after the Bodo game in the changing room. You can see that he's got every single player there. There's a really interesting bit of that video. It doesn't get spoke about much, where the dressing room is going crazy. And then he just literally says the word shush and literally everyone falls silent and instantly. He's got those players reading out the palm of his hands, that guy. And I think as fans, it's been difficult to sometimes see that this season because we don't get to see what goes on behind the scenes. We only get to see what's on the pitch, and on the pitch, it's not been good enough by any stretch of the imagination. So I completely understand why many fans have lost faith. But again, judging purely on the Europa League, and I know it's been difficult to do that when the Premier League has been so awful. I think it's clear he's got these players, man, and I really, really hope we can just do that. Because as you say, it'll be the coldest moment in Premier League history and football history. I don't know if you guys saw the Glasner one the other day, where he was like, "If you try and play against us again, I'll solve it," or something like that, and he did. But this is like that times 100. So to end Tottenham's 17-year trophy drought after quoting that at the beginning of the season when we finished 17th is mad. And it's just the kind of madness that is associated with this football club. So I think it's got a pretty good chance of happening. I've said it on before. I said it on Last One on Spurs. I'll say it again tonight. If we do it, I'm going to get an Ange tattoo. I know exactly what I'm getting. So I'm going to say it again, so I have to do it.
I'll make sure Hollie clips that and puts that on TikTok. Don't worry. George, kind of going off the point, because I've had this discussion with non-Spurs fans and Spurs fans alike. We've obviously had managers that have won things. We've had project managers. As a club, is it this suffering we've been through this season, or us turning on the club, on the team to an extent at points? Does this mean that this is the painful rebuild? Was the painful rebuild the club looking at itself and going, right, this is where we're at, we need to all be together? The minute we start turning on each other or having doubts, we don't progress. Now we've got a manager who, no matter what we throw at him, no matter what he gets from fans on the sidelines, still wants this club to win, will still stick up for this club in press conferences. That's the thing. We had Conte in the past who lost his rag at Southampton and, didn't turn on the fans, but kind of turn on the club, and has been a clubman throughout. Does that matters massively right now as a club and going forward potentially?
100%, because I think with the appointment of the likes of Mourinho, Conte, again it just kind of wreaked a lot of desperation of, we have really good players here, we had really good players in this sort of Poch era, they didn't get over the line. Okay, the missing step is getting a win now manager, a guy that's done it all, but realistically has no connection with the club at all. Like, we talk about ex-Chelsea managers, but at the end of the day, Jose Mourinho has always loved Chelsea, and he even said afterwards how he felt he had the least connection with the Spurs fans. And again, with Conte, he does the same thing every single club he goes to. He demands more and more and more until he can basically throw the club under the bus and get the next job. It's happened. It's even happened at Napoli, even despite the fact that he's close to winning the league. So I think and that's what I like about Ange as well. And I'm the same as Bill. I've stuck with him for a long, long time because I feel like I bought into him as much as the players did when it came to his ethos, just how he is and how he views football is what I love as well. Like, even his interviews, it's quite refreshing to see how he talks about the club. And we're talking about a manager that has been under fire from us fans week in, week out, yet is still defending us tooth and nail, like just last week. And I think it was Basuma that said it. I remember seeing like a quote from an interview this week where players was praising Ange, saying how he always protects the players, which is what they love about him. And we haven't had that for a long time. So at the very minimum, regardless of whether he's here next year or not, as long as we get over the line on Wednesday, I think he's done his job and he's said what he's going to do. He's going to turn the club back into a winning team that has the belief that they can win something, because I think we've lost that for years and years and years from not having it. So I think it's him providing that mentality to us. It's just so important. And I think it kind of reminds me a little bit. It's not really the same, but you know how like Di Matteo won the Champions League with Chelsea. It's like he got them over a line, and then they kind of were able to progress from then. I feel like we can almost potentially do the same thing. And all right, there's been suffering in the Premier League, but if he gives us a Europa League trophy and back into the Champions League, and he bows out, done his job, and we move on to the next manager and the next set of players or whatever, I think that's just how football is nowadays, and that is effectively the rebuild. Sorry to come back on your, I know it's a bit long-winded way of saying it, but come back to your question about it being a rebuild. It's like it's football's changing, and I don't think we're really going to see managers stick around for years and years and years and years. And I think we just need to, as a club, decide what we want to do. Do we want to have a certain philosophy, bring in a certain type of manager and player? And I think they've started to suss that over the last couple of years.
Billy, is there a scenario in your head or that you'd like where obviously you wouldn't like it because it would have meant we've lost on Wednesday, but is there a scenario in which we lose on Wednesday and Ange is the manager of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club next season?
No, there simply isn't. I think we've got like 3 paths that we can possibly go down, and I'm not entirely sure which one I think is the best one. I think one of them is that we lose and he goes. One of them is that we win and he stays, and the other one is that we win and he goes. But I think in that scenario, I think hopefully he would sort of be by mutual consent. I don't think Daniel Levy is going to sack a manager that's just won the Europa League. I think if he left when he wins the trophy, walks off into the sunset, we pay him a huge bonus, I think that could be the best thing for everybody. And my God, he would go down as like an absolute legend. Like, he'll be immediately in the ranks of like Keith Birkinshaw and Bill Nicholson. These European trophy winning managers at Tottenham. So yeah, I think that there are 3 possible pathways there. I don't know which one's going to happen, but make no mistake about it. If we lose this game, there's not a single chance he'll be our manager next season.
No, but George, if we do win on Wednesday, is there a chance? Obviously, yes, there's a chance that he will be the manager next year. But if he stays on and we see the same Premier League performances we've seen, how long do you think he'll have? But also, like Billy's kind of said there, maybe with all the stick that's gone on and he's got a chance to walk away doing the coldest thing ever for his career, is staying at Spurs the correct decision even if they win?
This is where I'm like genuinely like so torn in this scenario, and I think it's such a tough thing for him and the club to decide, because where I'm like really 50-50 on the matter if we did win on Wednesday is, on one hand, he has done what he set out to do, and he's turned us into a team that can win trophies again, and not just win trophies, winning a big European trophy, getting us into Champions League football next year. That was kind of the whole point of this project, is being able to create a winning team. Fresh players that won't have a sort of history of losing behind them. So then do you keep the manager on? Because as we've just discussed there, the players clearly back him. The players love him to bits. They haven't wavered. But my main issue, and what I think about, and I said this on Last One, I suppose, yesterday, is because so many of the fans have already turned on him because of how poor the Premier League has gone. The moment there is a wobble at the start of next season, there is going to be so much pressure, and it's going to be piling on him. And I think we would fall into that Ten Hag trap of, if we get a bad couple runs of games in a row, he's going to be gone. And then you're searching for a manager mid-season again. Then you're planning from the beginning again mid-season, which very, very rarely works out. So I think I'm leaning towards leave on a high. You've done your job. He'll get another great job after it as well because of it. And then we'll also just evolve as a club and move on to the next manager and new ideas and some new players as well. I think that's probably the best scenario, but it just feels weird that we'd be getting rid of a manager that's just won us our first European trophy in 42 years. I don't know. It's such a tough situation.
It is very tough, but it has got to that time of the show where I was going to ask for score predictions, but I won't go that far because I don't want anyone to get clipped and end up on another fan TV channel somewhere. But I will ask Billy, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel going into Wednesday?
I mean, I firstly, it's literally, I don't know about you guys, but it's literally 24/7 on my mind. It's all I can think about. It's just
work was a strong day.
Yeah, I have to look after 30 children for 5 hours a day, and all I can think about is Bilbao. Like, I can't teach a maths lesson at this rate. I can't do it. So yeah, it's really tough, man. Do you know what? It's a really, really difficult one to call, and because of all the, we're playing a team that we can beat. We beat them 3 times this season, but at the same time, we've had so much pain in finals. Man United are a traditionally winning team, but I think on the day, I've just got a feeling. I mean, watching that Crystal Palace game, watching that Newcastle final, I just hope that we can take that energy into this game and forget all the history and forget all the mess ups that we've had in the past and take that energy into it. When really, at the end of the day, it's just 2 football teams playing each other in a stadium, and that's all this game is. And if we treat it like that, we will win. I'll give myself a 7.5 at the moment.
George?
Yeah, I was hovering around that sort of 7 mark. I think it's one of those situations, like exactly how Billy said there. Like I'm confident in the sense that I've seen how bad Man United are and the fact that we've already beaten them, so it is possible. But then equally, on one hand, like you just said there, we've not had a great run in finals. We've also been just equally as poor in the season as well. But again, as we were sort of about earlier, my mind is going back to Tottenham in the Europa League versus Tottenham in the Premier League. And I know Man United are sort of similar as well. They're obviously unbeaten in Europa League and they put in good performances there. But just knowing how we performed against Frankfurt, how we performed against Bodo Glimt, and just the way the players are sort of speaking about it in the interviews this week, it really makes me feel like they're really properly gearing themselves up to win this for the fans, for themselves. And I think Man United, there's a lot of holes there, man. So I'm at a somewhat confident. So yeah, like a 7, 6.8, 7, something like that.
I think there's a lot to be said in the fact that you look at these Palace Man City games. Like that game means absolutely everything to Palace. And Man City is like a 4th FA Cup final in 5 years, or whatever it is. Liverpool the same. You know, they're going for the league. They don't really care about the Carabao Cup. Newcastle, it's everything to them. This game is everything to us. It's literally like all or nothing. For Man United, they don't really. Let's be honest. They'd love to win it, obviously, but it's not going to change them. And they're a team that constantly used to battle for all the best. Even Ruben Amorim is coming out and saying that he doesn't really care about it that much. It's not been good enough. Whatever happens, they're having a barbecue if they win. They're not even doing a bus parade. They're having a barbecue. So, for us, it's for everything. For them, I don't think it matters as much. And I really hope we take that energy into the final.
And supposedly they've already signed Cunha today for his release clause. So it's not like that. It's not like getting into the Champions League or whatever is making a difference for them either. So.
Yeah, exactly, man. They're going to spend. They're too big to fail, Man United. This Europa League is not going to be, like a seismic event like it could potentially be for us.
I think that's the thing for us. It is that we as Spurs fans, and I don't know about you guys, when I've spoken to rival fans, we're spoken about of being too big for our boots and you're a top 6 club, but what have you won? This really does silence a lot of that. I don't think it goes far enough to cement it, but it definitely puts a marker down to say, look, we're not that. We're not as big as the teams of United, etc. But I don't want to end this show because it means that I've got to go off the show and then try and continue with the rest of my life and go to work tomorrow and just sit and think about Wednesday. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you to my 2 wonderful guests for joining me today. We're going to do the usual rounds. Billy, where can everyone find you on socials?
Yeah, Billie T on Twitter, and just thank you very much for hosting tonight, man. It's been a great one. Shout out to Hollie as well. She's literally on in the air now. Is that right?
Yeah, she should be. Yeah, she should be. I don't know whether I'm going to stay up till 2 o'clock. Wait for her to get home, but we'll see.
And speaking of that, George, when are you in the air, man?
What's that? Sorry.
When are you in the air? When are you going?
I'm leaving at 8:10 in the morning for Santander. So
do you see that Spurs fan that just showing the video where it's like raining in Bilbao?
Yeah. I've been refreshing the weather every day and it's changing. I'm packing my wet weather coat with me.
Enjoy, man.
I've got to do all that now as well.
So apart from in the rain in Bilbao, George, where else can everyone find you?
Yeah, so I'm just George Achillia everywhere on all platforms. I've been trying to get this 1 Spurs fan versus 5 Arsenal fans video out for so long. And it's going out tomorrow. I have to get it out before the final because some of the questions involve trophies. So I can't wait until afterwards. But I'm going to be editing the rest of it tonight. It's nearly finished. So that should be it was a pretty tasty one. I got George, don't know if you know him. He took on 5 Arsenal fans, including Lee Judges. So it was a very, very spicy video.
Watch.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, just pretty much George Achillia on everything. Thanks for hosting and thanks for having me on.
That's all right. No worries, guys. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And as always, in typical Hollie fashion, come on, you Spurs. What?